Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to ancient Rome, to a world of marble palaces, torchlit corridors, whispering servants, and men who controlled one of the greatest empires in human history. So before we begin, dim the lights, get comfortable, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and settle in for tonight's journey. And if you enjoy these sleepy history adventures, consider subscribing. Also, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating seeing people from all over the world slowly drifting toward sleep together while exploring the past. Now, close your eyes for a moment and imagine Rome after sunset. The noise of the city begins to soften as darkness spreads across the empire's capital. During the day, Rome is loud, crowded, chaotic, and endlessly active. Merchants shout in busy markets, chariots rumble across stone roads, senators argue in public spaces, and thousands upon thousands of citizens move through streets packed with energy. But as night arrives, something changes. Oil lamps begin glowing in windows, torches flicker along palace walls, and the city slowly transitions into a different world, quieter, darker, and in some ways more mysterious. And somewhere above this massive city, inside a palace on the Palatine Hill, lives the most powerful man in the Roman world, the emperor. At first, becoming Roman emperor sounds like the ultimate dream. You command vast armies, control unimaginable wealth, issue laws affecting millions, and rule territories stretching across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. When you speak, governors listen, generals obey, senators pay attention. Your face appears on coins throughout the empire. People call you ruler of the civilized world. Honestly, this sounds less like a job and more like unlocking the final level of power.
Unfortunately, Rome had one small problem. Actually, many problems. Being emperor was not just about luxury and prestige. It also meant living with constant pressure, political danger, endless responsibility, and the deeply uncomfortable reality that many powerful people might prefer you dead. This creates a rather difficult bedtime environment. Because sleep, as it turns out, becomes surprisingly complicated when you rule Rome. Modern people struggle to sleep because of stress, deadlines, finances, social media, or that embarrassing thing they said 5 years ago. Roman emperors had different problems. They worried about assassination plots, rebellious generals, political betrayal, military disasters, succession crises, food shortages, tax revolts, and whether the Praetorian Guard, the elite soldiers assigned to protect them, might decide protecting someone else sounds more profitable.
Not ideal for restful sleep, this is why nighttime rituals became deeply important. Sleep was not simply biological necessity for Roman emperors, it was survival. A tired ruler makes poor decisions, and poor decisions in imperial Rome could become catastrophic very quickly. The empire never truly slept, so the emperor needed ways to calm both body and mind despite carrying impossible responsibilities.
To understand these nightly rituals, we first need to understand what the emperor's day looked like. Because the secret to Roman imperial sleep begins with Roman imperial exhaustion. Most emperors began their day early. Long before much of Rome had fully awakened, servants were already moving through palace corridors, preparing clothing, food, reports, and schedules. Messages arrived from generals, governors, tax officials, and political advisors.
Some news involved routine administration. Other reports could involve rebellion, war, or financial crisis. Imagine waking up and before breakfast learning that a governor in Gaul is demanding reinforcements. Grain shipments from Egypt are delayed, and a senator may be secretly funding your political enemies. That kind of mourning affects your evening. Throughout the day, the emperor rarely enjoyed privacy. Petitioners requested favors, advisors demanded decisions, military leaders discussed strategy, and senators carefully positioned themselves within the shifting landscape of Roman politics. Even leisure often served political purpose. Public appearances reinforced authority. Ceremonies projected stability. Games entertained the masses. Banquets built alliances. Every interaction mattered because perception mattered almost as much as reality. Rome was obsessed with power, and power attracted ambition. This made trust extremely difficult. Every smile raised questions. Every compliment required interpretation. Every friendship carried strategic implications. The Roman elite played political games at extraordinary levels. Families built alliances through marriage, wealth, influence, military loyalty, and social networks. The emperor stood at the center of all of it, which meant every ambitious person in Rome eventually had opinions about imperial succession. And if history teaches us anything about Roman emperors, it is this: many did not die peacefully in bed. That is not meant as dark humor, although admittedly it sounds like it. It is simply historical reality. Roman imperial history contains an astonishing number of assassinations, poisonings, betrayals, and suspicious deaths. Some emperors died in battle. Some died from illness. Others died because someone nearby decided Rome needed new management. This reality made nighttime psychologically complicated. Darkness amplifies fear. During daylight, an emperor could act, command, and control. At night, the palace quieted, and thoughts grew louder. Doubts appeared, anxiety sharpened, questions surfaced. Who is loyal? Who is pretending? Who benefits if I disappear tomorrow? Suddenly sleep feels much harder. This is where Roman nightly rituals became essential. Contrary to modern imagination, many emperors did not simply feast extravagantly until collapsing onto luxurious beds. Yes, banquets existed, and some rulers indulged heavily, but rulers who survived long often developed routines that helped manage stress. These routines combined Roman medicine, philosophy, religion, habit, and luxury into something surprisingly sophisticated. One of the first important nighttime rituals involved bathing. Romans loved baths. Actually, saying Romans loved baths might be an understatement. Roman bathing culture was legendary. Public baths served as social hubs, wellness centers, exercise spaces, and relaxation environments. Even within the imperial palace, bathing held great importance. Warm water relaxed muscles, improved circulation, and helped wash away physical fatigue from long days. For emperors, evening baths often carried psychological value as well. Imagine stepping away from endless politics into warm water surrounded by marble, steam, and soft lamplight. The noise of the day fades. Muscles unclench. Breathing slows. Servants bring oils and towels. For a brief moment, the empire feels far away. That moment mattered. Roman baths were carefully structured environments. Warm rooms, hot baths, cooler rinses, massage oils, and scraping tools all contributed to physical recovery. Yes, scraping tools. Romans used a curved metal tool called a stridule to remove sweat, oil, and dirt from the skin. It sounds mildly aggressive by modern spa standards, but Romans considered it normal. After bathing came one of the most soothing parts of imperial nighttime ritual, scented oils. Romans deeply appreciated fragrance. Lavender, rose, saffron, myrrh, cinnamon, frankincense, and herbal oils were valued not only for luxury, but also for calming effects. Physicians influenced by Greek medical theory believed scent could affect mood, balance the body, and promote restful sleep. Certain oils were thought to reduce agitation and quiet the mind. In modern terms, Roman emperors were surprisingly close to aromatherapy. After a hot bath and fragrant oils, the body naturally began transitioning toward rest. But physical comfort alone could not quiet an emperor's mind. The greater challenge was mental. This is where philosophy entered the bedroom. That sentence sounds unusual, but Roman elites took philosophy seriously, especially Stoicism. Thinkers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius taught ideas centered around discipline, self-control, acceptance, and inner peace. These ideas became especially valuable for rulers surrounded by chaos. Marcus Aurelius provides one of the most famous examples. Though Emperor of Rome, he regularly wrote personal reflections reminding himself to remain calm, rational, and grounded despite enormous pressure. His writings reveal something deeply human. Even one of history's most powerful rulers needed mental strategies to sleep peacefully. Stoic reflection became a kind of nightly ritual. Before sleep, some rulers reviewed the day mentally. What went well? What was handled poorly? Which emotions were unnecessary? Which worries lay beyond personal control? This mental discipline aimed to reduce emotional chaos. Instead of carrying every fear into bed, philosophy encouraged letting go of what could not be controlled. Easier said than done, of course, especially when you rule Rome. Still, the practice helped. It created psychological structure. The mind, instead of spiraling endlessly through worst-case scenarios, followed deliberate reflection. This reduced mental agitation and improved the chances of rest. And yet, even after baths, oils, and philosophy, one challenge remained: the palace itself, because in Part 2 we'll enter the imperial palace at night, exploring guarded bedrooms, secret corridors, food tasters, hidden paranoia, and why even lying in bed as Roman emperor could feel surprisingly dangerous. The secret nightly rituals of ancient Roman emperors for restful sleep, Part 2. By the time the evening bath was over, the oils had been applied, and the body had finally begun relaxing after an exhausting day. An outside observer might assume the Roman emperor could now enjoy peace. The muscles felt lighter, the skin felt clean, and the noise of daytime politics had faded into the distance. On the surface, everything seemed perfect for sleep. Unfortunately, physical comfort was only one small piece of the puzzle, because the greatest obstacle to imperial rest was not an aching body. It was the palace itself. At night, the imperial palace transformed into a completely different world. During the day, it was full of movement and controlled chaos. Senators arrived with carefully rehearsed speeches. Generals brought military updates. Messengers delivered urgent reports from distant provinces. Servants moved through corridors carrying food, scrolls, and orders. And advisors quietly discussed matters that could reshape the empire. The palace was alive with power, but after sunset, that energy changed. The noise faded. Footsteps became quieter. Torches burned lower. Shadows stretched longer across marble floors. And in that quiet, something unsettling emerged. Silence. Silence sounds peaceful until you are one of the most powerful and vulnerable men on earth. For an ordinary Roman citizen, nighttime usually meant locking doors, finishing dinner, and hoping tomorrow would be manageable. For the emperor, nighttime could be psychologically dangerous because darkness gave the mind space to wander. During the day, problems demanded immediate action. At night, those same problems turned into thoughts, fears, and possibilities. And the human mind has a remarkable talent for imagining worst-case scenarios when surrounded by darkness and silence. The emperor's private quarters reflected both luxury and paranoia. Roman imperial bedrooms could be decorated with fine fabrics, expensive wood, marble, gold details, and carefully selected furniture. Oil lamps provided warm, flickering light. Soft cushions and layered bedding created comfort far beyond what ordinary citizens could imagine. Yet, despite all that luxury, one uncomfortable truth remained. A beautiful room does not guarantee peaceful sleep, especially if someone wants you dead. This is where palace security became essential. The emperor never truly slept alone, even if no one was physically inside the bedroom. Guards were positioned nearby. Trusted servants remained available. Doors were monitored. Corridors were watched. Access to private chambers was tightly controlled. Or at least, that was the goal. In reality, Roman history repeatedly proved that the greatest threats often came from people who already had access. That was the terrifying part. Many assassination attempts in Roman history did not come from strangers sneaking through windows in dramatic fashion. They often came from insiders, trusted guards, servants, political allies, military officers, or even family members. The more power someone had, the smaller their circle of trust often became. And even within that circle, loyalty could shift quickly. Take the Praetorian Guard, for example. In theory, the Praetorian Guard existed to protect the emperor. They were elite soldiers stationed close to imperial power, trained and heavily armed, serving as personal protectors of Rome's ruler. Sounds reassuring, right? There was just one problem. The Praetorian Guard also understood something extremely important. They were very close to power, and proximity to power changes people. Over time, the Praetorian Guard became one of the most politically influential forces in Rome. They protected emperors, yes, but they also removed them, sometimes violently, sometimes very violently. At certain points in Roman history, being protected by the Praetorian Guard was almost like sleeping beside a tiger that had been promised food, safe until it wasn't. Imagine trying to sleep, knowing the men guarding your door are highly trained warriors who could either save your life or end it depending on how politics shifts tomorrow morning. Not ideal for deep sleep. Because of this, nighttime rituals often included security checks. Trusted attendants confirmed guard positions. Access points were reviewed. Food and drink sources were controlled. Sensitive documents were secured. Even after official evening routines ended, layers of protection remained active around the emperor. And speaking of food and drink, we need to talk about poison. Poison occupied a disturbingly important place in Roman politics. Unlike dramatic sword attacks, poison was subtle, quiet, difficult to detect. It required no army, no open rebellion, and no public confrontation. Just one compromised meal, one cup of wine, or one trusted hand delivering something deadly. Naturally, this created another bedtime complication. Roman emperors often relied on food tasters, so individuals whose job involved sampling meals and drinks before the emperor consumed them. The logic was simple. If someone collapses before the emperor eats, dinner plans change immediately. Functional, but not exactly relaxing. Imagine being served warm evening wine before bed and thinking, "This looks wonderful, but let's wait and see if anyone dies first." That is not ideal mental preparation for sleep. And poison fears were not irrational paranoia. Roman history contains enough suspicious deaths to justify concerns. Emperors, nobles, and rivals frequently accused one another of poisoning. Whether every accusation was true is impossible to know, but the fear itself shaped behavior. Once fear enters daily routine, peace becomes harder to find. This brings us to one of the most fascinating parts of imperial nighttime rituals, the deliberate creation of calm environments. Roman elites understood something surprisingly modern environment affects sleep. Bright noise, mental agitation, and physical discomfort disrupt rest. Quiet, routine, warmth, and sensory comfort improve it. So despite all the political tension, many emperors carefully structured evenings to encourage calm. Lighting mattered. Instead of overwhelming brightness, oil lamps created soft, warm illumination. Shadows moved gently across walls. The atmosphere became intimate and quieter. Bright, harsh light stimulates alertness, while softer lighting encourages relaxation. The Romans did not describe this using modern neuroscience, of course, but practical experience taught them what worked. Sound mattered too. The palace after midnight was intentionally quieter. Loud activity decreased. Conversations softened. Movement slowed. Some rulers preferred total silence. Others found gentle sound more calming. In certain elite households, soft music could be played before sleep, often involving lyres, flutes, or quiet strings. Slow music reduced mental tension and created emotional distance from daytime stress. In modern terms, some Roman emperors essentially had bedtime playlists. Not a bad idea. Then there was reading, or, more accurately, listening. Not every emperor personally read before bed, but literature, poetry, philosophy, and historical works often formed part of evening routine. Trusted servants or educated companions might read aloud from respected texts. Poetry from Virgil or Horace, philosophical reflections, historical accounts, moral teachings, these readings served multiple purposes. They educated, they entertained, and importantly, they redirected thought. An anxious mind loops around current worries. A focused mind shifts elsewhere. Listening to measured language, thoughtful philosophy, or familiar stories helped move attention away from political stress. Instead of mentally replaying a senator's suspicious comment from earlier tenets, the emperor might focus on epic poetry or stoic ideas about mortality and control. This mental redirection mattered enormously, because once the body lies still, the mind becomes louder, and for Roman emperors, nighttime thoughts could become brutal. What if a general on the frontier becomes too popular? What if a governor delays taxes intentionally? What if a senator is secretly funding rivals? What if succession becomes unstable? What if the army supports someone else? What if tomorrow begins with rebellion? The Roman Empire was massive, and controlling something massive means accepting constant uncertainty. You cannot personally oversee everything. You must trust reports, delegates, and systems. But trust always carries risk, and risk fuels anxiety. Some emperors handled this better than others. Marcus Aurelius is one of the best examples of emotional discipline. Despite ruling during plague, war, and immense pressure, he repeatedly trained his mind through stoic practice. His reflections show extraordinary self-awareness. He reminded himself not to fear what lay beyond control, not to be ruled by anger, and not to waste energy on what could not be changed tonight. That last part is especially important. Tonight, not tomorrow, not next year. Tonight, one of the most powerful sleep rituals, ancient or modern, is recognizing which problems cannot be solved before morning. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. A problem that cannot be solved tonight gains nothing from stealing tonight's sleep. Simple idea, very difficult in practice, especially when you rule Rome. And yet, even after baths, oils, philosophy, soft light, music, guarded corridors, secured food, and mental discipline, one final enemy remained: the emperor's own imagination, because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the palace was not outside the bedroom, it was inside the mind. And in part 3, we'll explore dreams, omens, Roman superstition, prophetic nightmares, astrologers, and why some emperors feared sleep itself because of what they might see in their dreams. The secret nightly rituals of ancient Roman emperors for restful sleep, part 3. Even after warm baths, calming oils, guarded corridors, soft music, and carefully controlled nighttime routines, Roman emperors still faced one final challenge before sleep could truly arrive, and in many ways this challenge was the most difficult of all, because it came not from assassins, poison, or political enemies, but from something far more personal, the mind itself. Once the palace grew quiet and the body finally stopped moving, thoughts became louder, fears became sharper, and the imagination gained unusual power, because darkness has always had a strained relationship with human thought. During the day, logic often dominates because action is required, but at night, uncertainty grows, and even the strongest rulers can find themselves thinking about possibilities they successfully ignored while the sun was still in the sky. For Roman emperors, sleep carried an unusual relationship with fear, because dreams were not always viewed as meaningless mental activity. Romans, especially elite Romans, often treated dreams with remarkable seriousness. They believed dreams could carry messages, warnings, omens, or divine signals from the gods. This belief transformed sleep into something psychologically complicated, because closing your eyes did not simply mean rest. Sometimes it meant entering a world where gods, symbols, warnings, and prophecies might appear. Imagine trying to fall asleep peacefully while also believing your dreams could reveal political danger, divine judgment, or even your future death. Suddenly, bedtime becomes much less relaxing. Roman religion blended state, ritual, superstition, personal belief, and influences from Greek, Egyptian, and Eastern traditions. Omens mattered deeply in Roman culture. Bird patterns, lightning strikes, strange births, eclipses, unusual animal behavior, and temple signs could all be interpreted as meaningful. If people could find divine messages in birds or thunderstorms, naturally they could also find meaning in dreams. Some dreams were considered symbolic, requiring interpretation. others were seen as direct warnings, and if you were emperor, people paid extraordinary attention to anything unusual connected to you, including what happened while you slept. This created a fascinating dynamic inside the imperial palace. If an emperor experienced a vivid dream, advisors, priests, astrologers, and interpreters might discuss its meaning seriously. Was the dream a warning from Jupiter, a message from Apollo, a sign of betrayal, a prophecy of war? The same dream that modern people might dismiss as random subconscious noise could become a matter of state concern in ancient Rome. This meant some emperors did not merely fear bad events during waking life, they feared what their dreams might reveal at night. Julius Caesar provides one of history's most famous examples, even though technically he was never emperor in the later imperial sense. According to ancient accounts, the night before Caesar's assassination, his wife Calpurnia experienced terrifying dreams and begged him not to attend the Senate. She reportedly dreamed of his death and saw disturbing signs that convinced her danger was near. Whether every detail is historically accurate matters less than what the story reveals about Roman psychology. People believed dreams could warn of disaster, and many Romans took such warnings seriously. Unfortunately for Caesar, political obligation proved stronger than caution. After Caesar's assassination, the Roman world learned something: brutal power at the top offered no guarantee of safety. Later emperors understood this deeply. The memory of violent political transitions lingered across generations, creating a culture where rulers constantly evaluated risk. Every suspicious gesture mattered. Every rumor mattered. Every strange omen mattered. Even dreams could become psychologically loaded with significance, because when power and paranoia mix together, the imagination becomes incredibly active. Some emperors became deeply superstitious, while others tried to remain rational. But even rational rulers lived in a society saturated with symbolism. Augustus, Rome's first emperor, carefully cultivated an image of divine favor and destiny. Omens connected to his rise helped strengthen legitimacy. Prophecy and symbolism became tools of power as much as personal belief. When an empire's political structure partly depends on the idea that divine forces support your rule, signs and omens naturally gain enormous weight. That includes what happens during sleep. This is where astrologers entered the picture, and Roman elites loved astrologers far more than they probably should have. Astrology became extremely influential throughout the Roman world, especially among elites seeking guidance about fate, success, danger, and timing. Birth charts were studied, planetary alignments were analyzed, predictions circulated constantly. Some rulers consulted astrologers privately before major decisions. Others feared them because predictions could influence public perception. Imagine an astrologer casually suggesting that someone else has stronger signs of imperial destiny. That becomes politically awkward very quickly. For some emperors, nighttime included consultation with astrologers or interpreters after disturbing dreams. If an emperor woke, shaken by a nightmare, that dream might not simply be forgotten at breakfast. It could trigger discussions, rituals, or behavioral changes. Protective offerings might be made. Certain activities might be delayed. Particular people might suddenly receive more scrutiny. A dream involving betrayal could easily make an already suspicious emperor even more paranoid. And paranoia, unfortunately, became a recurring feature of imperial Rome. Some paranoia was justified, some was not. The difficult part is that when real conspiracies exist, paranoia becomes harder to distinguish from reasonable caution. If you know rulers before you were poisoned, betrayed, stabbed, or overthrown, then suspicion feels rational. The problem begins when suspicion grows so strong that every shadow feels threatening and every silence feels suspicious. Sleep suffers greatly in that environment because the mind never fully relaxes. Few examples illustrate this better than Emperor Tiberius. Tiberius ruled after Augustus and became increasingly withdrawn and suspicious later in life. Ancient sources describe an emperor growing more isolated, more distrustful, and more haunted by political fear. Informants gained influence, accusations multiplied. Loyalty became difficult to verify. Whether every ancient story is fully accurate is debated, but the larger pattern remains fascinating. Power without trust often produces isolation, and isolation feeds anxiety. An isolated mind becomes dangerous to itself. At night, isolated thoughts often loop endlessly. What did that senator really mean earlier? Why did that general hesitate during conversation? Why was that message delayed? Why did that advisor avoid eye contacts? The mind starts connecting fragments into possible threats. Some concerns prove valid. Others are illusions created by stress. The problem is that at 2 a.m., the brain rarely distinguishes between the two with perfect clarity. Because of this, another important nightly ritual involved conversation with trusted inner circle figures. Not everyone slept immediately after withdrawing to private chambers. Some emperors spent late evening hours with a very small group of trusted companions, perhaps a philosopher, advisor, physician, close family member, or lifelong friend. These quiet conversations served a purpose beyond companionship. They grounded the emperor psychologically. Trust, when genuine, reduces stress. Speaking fears aloud sometimes weakens them. Hearing a calm perspective from someone loyal can prevent the mind from spiraling. That kind of emotional regulation mattered more than many people realize. Power often creates loneliness because the higher someone rises, the fewer honest voices remain around them. Many people tell rulers what rulers want to hear. Very few speak with genuine honesty. An emperor who found even one trusted person capable of calm truth possessed something incredibly valuable. That person could become part of the nightly transition from ruler to human being, from imperial burden to private self. And this transition was essential because, despite public mythology, Roman emperors were still human. They felt exhaustion, they felt grief, they felt anger, fear, regret, guilt, and uncertainty. They lost loved ones. They experienced betrayal. They carried trauma from war and politics. The imperial title did not erase human vulnerability. If anything, it amplified pressure by forcing emotional control under constant observation. Then there was another enemy of sleep guilt. Not every emperor carried it equally. Of course, some were astonishingly comfortable with cruelty. Others were far more reflective. But ruling Rome often required decisions with severe consequences. Military campaigns cost lives. Political purges destroyed families. Punishments could be brutal. Executions happened. Rebellions were crushed. Even necessary decisions could leave emotional weight behind. A thoughtful ruler might replay hard choices at night, questioning whether different decisions could have produced better outcomes. Marcus Aurelius again stands out here because his writings reveal extraordinary emotional awareness. Despite commanding armies and making life-altering decisions, he repeatedly reminded himself to act with reason and virtue. This suggests something important. He understood moral fatigue. Doing the right thing repeatedly under immense pressure is exhausting, and exhaustion affects sleep. This brings us to one of the most surprisingly modern aspects of Roman imperial sleep rituals: routine. Routine stabilizes the nervous system. The Romans did not use that exact language, but they understood habit. Repeating calming behaviors signals safety to the body. Bath, oil, light meal, quiet conversation, reading, reflection, prayer, rest. Repetition creates predictability, and predictability reduces anxiety. For a life filled with uncertainty, routine becomes a powerful anchor. Roman physicians also advised against heavy late-night eating. Large meals before sleep were believed to disrupt rest and digestion. Light evening meals were often preferred for better sleep quality. Wine might be consumed, but excessive drinking created poor sleep despite temporary relaxation. Some rulers ignored this wisdom naturally. Others followed it carefully. Even in ancient Rome, people understood the unpleasant reality of bad sleep after overeating and drinking too much. Then came prayer. Before sleep, many Romans offered private prayers or small rituals to household gods and protective spirits. Even emperors, despite their immense status, participated in ritual life. Prayer offered psychological comfort by creating a sense of connection to divine order. In uncertain times, ritual provides stability. It creates structure where chaos exists. Lighting incense, speaking familiar words, making offerings, these actions helped quiet the mind by reinforcing meaning and continuity. And perhaps that was the deepest secret behind Roman nightly rituals. They were not merely about sleep. They were about restoring order. The Roman Empire was vast, unpredictable, and chaotic. Every day brought uncertainty. Armies moved, politics shifted, loyalties changed, threats emerged. But each night, the emperor attempted something deeply human, creating a small, controlled space of calm before surrendering to sleep. Warm water, soft light, trusted voices, philosophy, prayer, and routine all served one purpose: pushing chaos outward, if only for a few hours. Because tomorrow, chaos would return. And in part 4, the final part, we'll explore the most intimate secret of all what actually happened inside the emperor's bedroom. How Roman emperors finally fell asleep, what they slept on, and why even their final moments before sleep revealed the strange burden of ruling Rome. The secret nightly rituals of ancient Roman emperors for restful sleep. After the baths, the scented oils, the guarded corridors, the quiet conversations, the philosophical reflections, and the evening prayers, the Roman emperor eventually arrived at the final stage of the nightly ritual, the moment when the ruler of the known world had to do something surprisingly ordinary. He had to lie down and try to sleep. That sounds simple enough, but for a Roman emperor, even this final step carried layers of ritual, symbolism, comfort, and psychological weight. The world outside might see only power, luxury, and divine authority, but inside the private chamber, the emperor became something far more human. He became a tired man carrying the weight of an empire into the darkness. The imperial bedroom itself was designed to create comfort, security, and status all at once. Depending on the period and the emperor, these private chambers could be remarkably luxurious, filled with expensive fabrics, polished marble, decorative frescoes, carved furniture, and carefully chosen objects that reflected wealth and prestige. Oil lamps cast warm golden light that danced gently across painted walls, soft shadows moving slowly with each flicker of flame. Heavy curtains helped block drafts and outside noise, while high-quality bedding provided far greater comfort than what ordinary Romans could ever imagine. Fine wool blankets, linen sheets, stuffed cushions, and elevated bed frames turned sleep into something closer to a ritual of controlled comfort. Yet, despite all this luxury, one uncomfortable truth remained unchanged. No amount of gold can silence an anxious mind. Roman beds themselves were different from modern ones, but elite households enjoyed impressive craftsmanship. Beds often featured wooden or bronze frames with woven supports beneath layered bedding. Wealthy Romans could afford mattresses stuffed with wool, feathers, reeds, or soft plant fibers. The emperor, naturally, had access to the finest materials available. Comfort mattered not just for pleasure, but for recovery, because the physical demands of ruling were real. Long ceremonies, endless meetings, military travel, political stress, and emotional fatigue all accumulated inside the body. Restorative sleep was essential. A physically exhausted ruler without proper recovery becomes slower, less focused, and more vulnerable to poor judgment. Rome could tolerate many things, but an exhausted emperor making bad decisions could become dangerous for everyone. Before actually lying down, some emperors followed one final calming ritual involving silence and controlled breathing, though they would not have described it in modern terms. Roman physicians, influenced by Greek medicine, believed strongly in balance of heat and cold, moisture and dryness, activity and rest, emotion and reason. Sudden transitions from intense stress to sleep were considered unwise. The body needed gradual calming. This meant that the final moments before sleep were intentionally quieter, slower, and more deliberate. Lamps might be dimmed further. Voices dropped to whispers or disappeared entirely. Movement stopped. The bedroom became still. That stillness mattered because stillness sends a powerful message to the body. Danger is absent. Rest is allowed. Of course, that message was not always easy for an emperor to believe. Even inside a guarded chamber, vulnerability felt real. Sleep requires surrender, and surrender is difficult when you rule Rome. During waking hours, the emperor maintained control through decisions, observation, authority, and command. Sleep temporarily removes that control. You close your eyes, awareness fades, reflexes slow. For several hours, you become vulnerable in ways power cannot fully prevent. This psychological surrender may have been one of the strangest burdens of imperial life. The most powerful man in the empire still had to accept that each night he must enter a state where he could not control events around him. That loss of control troubled some rulers deeply. The more paranoid an emperor became, the harder sleep often became. History gives us striking examples. Emperor Caligula, infamous for instability and cruelty, reportedly struggled with fear and erratic behavior. Ancient accounts describe sleeplessness, agitation, and growing paranoia. Whether every story about him is true remains debated, but the pattern is believable. Extreme power combined with fear often creates mental instability. A ruler constantly expecting betrayal begins seeing danger everywhere. The mind never truly powers down. Instead of rest, the night becomes an extension of psychological warfare. Nero provides another fascinating example, often remembered for extravagance, performance obsession, and political chaos. Nero's reign gradually descended into increasing instability and fear. As enemies multiplied and political pressure increased, paranoia intensified. Once a ruler begins losing trust in the people around him, sleep becomes a battleground. Every sound feels suspicious. Every delay feels meaningful. Every whisper becomes potential conspiracy. The mind becomes its own worst enemy. This is why the greatest nightly ritual may not have been physical at all. It may have been acceptance. The ability to say, "Tonight I have done what I can." That idea sounds simple, but psychologically it is profound. An emperor's work never truly ended. There was always more to solve. Another report to read. Another threat to consider. Another future problem to prepare for. Without boundaries, responsibility becomes endless. Sleep requires drawing a line between what must be handled now and what must wait until morning. Wise rulers understood this. Unwise rulers often suffered. Marcus Aurelius once again stands as perhaps the best example of healthy imperial mental discipline. His personal writings reveal a ruler repeatedly training himself to release unnecessary emotional burdens. He reminded himself of mortality, impermanence, duty, and reason. He accepted that external events often lay beyond personal control. This mindset likely helped him more than any luxury ever could, because true rest does not come merely from soft beds or quiet rooms. It comes from a mind willing to let go, and that may be the deepest secret of Roman imperial sleep. Not luxury, not wealth, not guards, not perfumes, mental discipline. A ruler who cannot quiet the mind remains trapped in endless tension. As the final lamps dimmed, some emperors likely drifted into sleep faster than others. Some probably fell asleep almost immediately from exhaustion. Others may have remained awake, staring into darkness while thoughts circled endlessly. The contrast between public image and private reality becomes especially striking here. To the empire, the emperor appeared almost superhuman calm, decisive, powerful, larger than life, but inside the bedroom, stripped of ceremony, titles, and public performance, he was simply human. A human body needing rest, a human mind struggling with stress, a human heart carrying fear, hope, regret, ambition, and fatigue. This human side of emperors is often forgotten because history loves dramatic headlines, wars, assassinations, scandals, revolts, triumphs, but history is also built from quiet moments, silent rooms, sleepless nights, private fears, internal battles nobody sees. The decisions shaping empires often emerge not only from public speeches and military victories, but also from private psychological states. A well-rested emperor might respond calmly to crisis. A sleep-deprived emperor might respond impulsively. The quality of rest could influence the fate of millions. That is a remarkable thought. Somewhere in ancient Rome, the future of the empire may occasionally have depended on whether its ruler got decent sleep. And if we step back, something fascinating becomes clear. Despite the centuries between us, the core struggle feels strangely familiar. Modern people may not rule empires, command legions, or fear palace assassins, but many of us understand restless nights. We know what it feels like when the body is tired but the mind refuses to stop. We know how worries grow louder in darkness. We know how tomorrow's problems try to invade tonight's rest. In that sense, Roman emperors feel surprisingly relatable. Yes, their responsibilities were extraordinary, but their minds remained human. They sought calm through routine, comfort, reflection, trusted relationships, philosophy, and ritual, many of the same things that help people sleep today. Warm baths still help. Soft lighting still helps. Quiet music still helps. Letting go of unsolved problems still helps. Human biology has changed far less than civilization around it. And perhaps that is why these nightly rituals feel so compelling. They reveal something timeless. Power does not eliminate stress. Wealth does not guarantee peace. Luxury does not automatically create rest. You can rule the greatest empire on earth and still lie awake at night thinking too much. That truth feels deeply human. From the outside, becoming Roman emperor looked like the ultimate dream. Absolute authority, immense wealth, historical significance, luxury beyond imagination, marble palaces, loyal armies, public admiration, endless influence. It sounds glorious, and in many ways it was. But every privilege came attached to cost. The palace offered comfort, but also isolation. The crown offered authority, but also pressure. Power created opportunity, but attracted danger. Every alliance carried risk. Every success created envy. Every decision shaped countless lives. The burden was enormous. Perhaps that is why the final moments before sleep mattered so much. Night offered the only true escape from performance. No senators demanding answers. No generals seeking approval. No crowds expecting leadership. No political theater. Just darkness, silence, breath, and the private self beneath imperial identity. For a few hours, the emperor stopped being Rome. He became only himself. And maybe that was the most restful ritual of all. Letting the title fall away. Letting the performance end. Letting the mind release its grip. As our journey through ancient Rome comes to an end, the city outside grows quiet beneath the night sky. The streets that roared with life during the day now rest under moonlight. Oil lamps flicker in distant windows. Temple fires burn softly. Guards patrol palace walls with measured footsteps. Somewhere in the imperial palace, behind guarded doors and heavy curtains, the emperor finally sleeps. Tomorrow, the empire will wake again. Messengers will arrive. Senators will scheme. Generals will report. Taxes will be counted. Rumors will spread. Politics will return. Power will demand everything once more. But tonight there is peace. The torches burn low. The marble corridors fall silent. The empire sleeps, and so does its ruler. So the next time you imagine a Roman emperor, do not picture only statues, crowns, and triumphal parades. Remember the quieter truth. Remember the man beneath the title. Remember the sleepless nights, the private fears, the rituals of calm, and the deeply human need for rest in a world full of chaos. Because despite all the power, all the wealth, and all the glory, even the ruler of Rome needed a good night's sleep. And perhaps that is tonight's final lesson. No matter how big the burden, no matter how loud the world becomes, everyone eventually needs a moment of stillness, a moment to breathe, a moment to let go, a moment to rest. Now let the marble halls fade into darkness. Let the palace torches dim into warm golden light, and allow ancient Rome to slowly drift into silence. Good night